Hey, deserving listeners, Twin Flames documentary, Amazon. Let's watch.
It's how I've always, I guess, labeled myself and referred to myself. So
why would you keep a name that's so obviously feminine?
Okay, so there's been a lot of footage that I haven't reacted to, and they're at a point now when they are in the timeline in which Jeff and Shalia are starting to force people to convert not only their sexual orientation, but also their gender, seemingly. And this is the original couple that I think was the very first couple, the success story for Twin Flames, a success story for Jeff and Shalia to advertise. And they are now, Jeff is trying to force one of the members to, I think, identify not as divine masculine, like spiritually masculine, but actually as a man.
Have any interest in becoming a man. This is me, I'm Anne, I'm she. When that wasn't respected, it did feel like a sense of betrayal.
What doesn't feel good about the name Dan?
I don't know, it just doesn't resonate.
Wow, this documentary provides more footage that shows what happened. In the other documentary, they told us, but in this one, they're just showing us. This is a moment where he's trying to force an individual to change their name to a quote-unquote masculine name. And yeah, yikes. Again, you just think, how did anyone follow them after this? If you were one, those two individuals, or you're an audience member, because I think there's dozens of people watching this, how could you possibly go along with it? But of course, we have to fill in the gaps that this wasn't the first thing that happened. This isn't the first thing that maybe if a member just joined the group today, they would skedaddle. But for the members and these folks, it's been years of a slow ramp up to this point. And I guess it parallels being in a relationship, an abusive relationship. You'll hear a story about someone who was being brutally, physically harmed by their spouse, and you just think, why didn't you leave, right? And of course, we understand there's a lot of dire consequences to leaving. But that is typically not what happens. What happens is there's a slow ramp up to that. It takes years to get to that level of violence. The first violent act might have been 5 years in or 3 years in. There might be indications that could predict that, but to the average person, they wouldn't be able to detect those things. So you might see someone with a temper, someone who breaks things when they're rageful, someone who is generally more controlling, doesn't apologize, can't take responsibility for mistakes, those kinds of signs. An early sign in early dating is, if the abusive person is a man, is that they adhere to hypermasculine cultural notions. So that for some people is an appealing thing, right? Ooh, I want that sort of thing. And of course, it's not an indication they're going to become abusive, but what's a better example? Someone who is, not all, this is a portion of abusive profiles, but one that is common enough that I could comment on is, 5 years in, there's a lot of physical violence that's happening, and control and gaslighting has been occurring this whole time. But if we go back to the very beginning, let's just say it's a heterosexual relationship and the man is the abusive person. And in the beginning, he is very romantic and opens the door for the woman on dates, orders for her, pays for her, won't let her pay, is very love bomby, and is very insistent that we are together, and any ambivalence, is just going to be rejected. If you're on the fence about a relationship, well, I'm sure, and I'm assertive, and I'm a real man, and we're going to have a family, and we're going to, I'm not really depicting it very well, but it's in that camp of certainty, of hypermasculinity or traditional masculinity. I'm traditionally masculine in some ways, but there's an inflexibility to the way I'm describing it, and an insistence of it. And also there can be qualities from this profile of him saying, I'm going to take care of you. Don't worry about those kinds of things. I'm going to come to your house and figure out how to fix things for you. Now, is it always the case? No, because maybe you just found a really nice fella who's handy, who has some traditional masculine ideas. It doesn't mean he's going to be abusive, but you get my point. So for these people, we have to assume that there were maybe some early indications that we can detect, but for some people, those are the things they're looking for. Just like for some people, they want a hypermasculine man. They want a man who is assertive and a take control kind of guy. Someone who isn't averse to getting in a physical altercation with someone, doesn't run away from fights, that kind of thing. And there's nothing wrong with finding that appealing or wanting that in a partner. And there's nothing wrong with wanting a self-help group that, looks kind of cultish, but it's a red flag. And so I guess I just wish our society was different, such that the individuals would have, at least some of them would have noticed the red flags and at least had a question mark and watched for things like, okay, my red flag, my radar is going off right now. My cult dar is going off. So I'm going to watch for this quality or that quality.
What doesn't feel good about the name Dan?
I don't know, it just doesn't resonate.
Jesus Christ. You're playing an avoidance game. And it's the avoidance game that prevents you from moving forward here. Just let the name be.
And he just kept on and on and on.
Yeah, so in the Netflix documentary, there was that mom who was wondering if her child had been coerced into believing that they were trans and had gone through procedures, surgeries. And we don't know, maybe that individual was actually trans, but the question was there as to whether or not Jeff and Shalia had coerced someone to believing that and had pressured them to believe that and had pressured them perhaps even to get the surgeries and to do the medical procedures. But we didn't get to see those interactions, so it was just a huge question mark. We just couldn't know. But now we're perhaps seeing a glimpse into how that might have played out. Who knows? But there are others as well. They're referring to a number of people who fully believed that they were trans suddenly out of nowhere without any past indication. Now, maybe some people just needed some encouragement or validation to come out, but we're at least seeing one example of someone who was like, I'm not trans. I'm she, her, I'm a woman. And this person was saying I was divine masculine, which I was okay with. But when he started pressuring me to identify as a man and to change my name to Dan, then I wasn't okay with that. And you hear the way that he talks, and the way that he talks that way because it works. It has worked with so many other people in so many other ways. And so you just have to wonder what he has done to some of these people.
Until the very end. And I mean, I think we both just completely broke and just agreed, like, fine, we'll do it.
I would consider that name.
Yeah, and it just points to the possibility that this has nothing to do with money, although it probably has something to do with money, but has much more to do with power, because it's such a risky move to make someone. But like I said, I keep saying that. I keep saying, like, it's such bad business. If he wanted to make money, he should have stayed in the realm he was in the beginning. The twin flame and the God stuff and the harmonious stuff and even the mirror stuff. But if he delivered it differently, even it's still cultish or maybe even full-blown cult, but it's not so obviously a problem even to the members, right? In this moment, the two members as a couple in the interviews, they say, I think eventually we just went along with it. I'm guessing for a lot of other members, they not only just went along with it, but then they started to convince themselves, and through the gaslighting effect, they believed that this person is connected to God, maybe even Jesus, and they know who I am. He's close to God, and if God says that I'm a man and need to go through surgery, then I guess that's what I needed to do.
There.
I just wanted it to be over.
Thanks. Anne the Man and Katrina. It's been a lovely class with you guys.
Very good.
Thank you. So much.
He needed Anne.
And then if you're a fellow member watching this, they're smiling. You don't know that they're uncomfortable. So you think, well, okay, I guess we're all okay with this, including those two people who have found their twin flame, the thing that I want, the thing that I'm looking for. So I guess Jeff is always right.
To agree to that publicly so that he could go turn to what was like a 95% female community and say, okay, now you're the guy and you're the girl and you're the guy and you're the girl and you're the guy and you're the girl and that's your twin flame and now you're all pairs.
Wow, so we're seeing, I believe, a text, from Jeff. Change Anne's name immediately. It's time. He's a guy. Take a guy's name and a guy's pronoun, and I will need to put someone else in charge of sales, or I will have to put someone else in charge. Right, so apparently they work for him, and so Jeff is saying, unless you do this, then you're fired. And I'm guessing they also would know that this means, oh my God, we're going to be ostracized from our loving community. Because that's another part of it that they give us a little bit of glimpse into, but is important to emphasize that with the Facebook group and people that they know that are within, driving distance that they've met up with, this has become their whole life. It's like a church congregation, their best friends, their support system. And to be blocked from that, because they have control over that Facebook group, right? They can block someone and then they're excommunicated. They are kicked out of the compound, so to speak, which can be very distressing to people. And of course, losing your job.
He sent messages, private messages to me asking, why hasn't your man accepted the name I have given him yet?
Yeah, there's so many astonishing things about this documentary. The fact that he's doing this, and two, that people stick around. You would think that even after that meeting, they'd be like, okay, we're out. That was dumb. That was ridiculous. What is happening? And then after you get these texts, you'd think you'd be done, but they're not done. We hear them in interviews, present day, saying that they're done, and we're hearing their perspective now. But if we talk to them then, I think we would hear something different. And to me, that's just astonishing that he managed to do it to people in that way, that slow ramp up to this, all the things that he did to get here and all the mechanisms of cults. I don't know if he just watched a lot of documentaries about cults, just figured out what to do, or maybe there's a personality profile of someone with narcissism and psychopathy that they have natural impulses to do this sort of thing, and it just ends up creating a cult. I don't know. It's astonishing. Because, I just think for myself, if someone said, we're going to blow up the world unless you create a cult, I wouldn't know what to do. I'd be like, I don't think I can. That's got to be pretty hard. And just watching him do this, it's astonishing.
It's you.
There was a really big display of power there, trying to get us to submit, and it was very tactical. It was very abusive.
So there's been more meetings in which Jeff has been trying to coerce Anne to identify as a man and call herself Dan, and Anne is being very nice and polite, but in the end refusing in the very, very nice, polite way. And then Jeff says, you guys look dumb as fuck, hiding behind the lie still, because you haven't changed your name yet. Everyone thinks you are either weak, unable to change, or in stark disagreement with me. Yeah. If you wrote a script, there was a movie or a TV show about a cult leader, and you saw this stuff, you'd be like, come on. I mean, no one's going to fall for this stuff, or no cult leader is that psychopathic, right? And it's just like, there it is.
We were the one couple who they needed to be all in. So that was a real threat for them, for their community to witness Jeff being unsuccessful at control.
And then Shalia says, I can't believe these were my students for 3 years, the couple that is refusing to gender transition. I can't believe these were my students for 3 years who were hateful and jealous towards Jeff, An, and I. Yeah. That grammar would bug me. As a professor, it's, toward me and Jeff. You don't go, someone's being jealous towards I, it's towards me. Anyway, can you tell? As a professor, I even had this cheat sheet that I would send everyone, just like, don't do this. Anyway, it's not a huge deal, but yeah. And the other thing, of course, is that there's enough people in our society, and particularly around the world, who deny the reality of trans people, and as a part of that will claim that anyone who claims that they're trans has been brainwashed by the left, by the libs, and this is actually an example. I mean, that's not a thing. People who are trans have gone down a long road of opposition, and there's a lot of people who have yet to come out. So if someone claims that they're trans, there's a high likelihood that it is 100 billion% legit, because they know that there are so many consequences, and yet they're still willing to expose themselves to those consequences because they just can't do it anymore. They can't live the lie anymore. So, of course, there's that, and I don't need to tell you that, but for a lot of people, they think that the new age leftists, liberals, long-haired hippie people are influencing people to become trans, and that's the only reason why it exists. And there's an actual odd example of that seemingly literally happening here, where you have New Age, I don't know their politics, I'm going to take a guess and say that they're left-leaning anyway, and they're literally trying to force cisgender people to become trans, and might have actually done that. Okay, so the bits towards the end, this documentary I feel like was more satisfying, the Amazon one, I think, in that it tells a better story, I think. I don't know. Maybe they are both good at different things. And then a journalist said that now, currently, they have more members than ever. Even after exposés have already come out, there have been articles that have been published, and apparently a number of people left, but because they're still online, and these things happen, it's weird, where someone will, and I think we all kind of know this, especially if you're on YouTube, that if someone's a controversial figure and they do something controversial that is terrible, then yeah, they will experience a backlash, and they will experience a dip in their followership at first, but there's so much publicity that is given to these individuals, because everyone comments on it all the time, that it could actually backfire and create a lot of people gaining awareness of this thing, and then they check it out, and then they get sucked in, but I don't know. I imagine it probably would have grown anyway, because they have so much money and so much power, and they have so many free employees. They are, I don't know, but the allegations are that they will indoctrinate their members, their victims, to become free workers, or at least work for very little money. And when you have this huge workforce who can create press releases or posts, or can endorse, can talk about, oh, that article is wrong, or that documentary is wrong. But anyway, so there's been a steady increase, and now I can't remember the exact number, but it was something like 50,000 or 100,000 members currently, something like that, or maybe 40,000, somewhere in there. There's a lot of people. Because it's interesting, I didn't know, I wondered about that, because in both documentaries, it kind of makes it look like at any given time in the classes, there's maybe 50 people, 40 people. So I kept wondering, well, maybe the cult's pretty small, but, maybe the people that are in any given Zoom meeting, it's small, but the overall membership, people are taking classes. And of course you have all the coaches, sort of pyramid scheme of that whole thing, large. And so you just figure maybe a lot of people are being harmed. But then I also wonder if, like with NXIVM or with Scientology, you have a lot of people at the lower levels who are just benefiting from the courses and aren't really even fully indoctrinated into the cult. But there are people that rise up, maybe even handpicked, and those people get closer and get harmed, and the people get really close, like in Nexium, get harmed. Teal Swan, seemingly there was some speculations that's how it worked for her as well. Like someone could go to a Teal Swan live event or even watch her videos and just consume her information and maybe benefit from it. I don't know. I did some reaction videos to her videos and found them to be extremely problematic. I've said this before, but she literally said, I basically, I'm the only one on the planet that can help people with suicide, and I'm better than every single clinician. I'm more effective, and I know more than every professional in psychology and psychiatry. It was something as absurd as that. And anyway, so I was reacting. But with these organizations, sometimes they'll have an inner circle that they will have full control over, like full control over their bodies, their gender, their sexuality, where they live, what they think, who their friends are, what they eat, everything, what they wear, everything. And then down from there, there's trickle-down harm that happens, but a little bit more freedom to move, maybe. And then further down, you have a lot of people, maybe most of the people, who aren't close enough to be harmed directly. Now, could harm still happen? Yeah. Like with the Teal Swan example, just someone who casually watches her videos on YouTube would potentially be harmed by being told that everyone in my field is incompetent when it comes to suicide or maybe anything in psychology, and thus they don't seek help when they might benefit from it. Now, as I've said in those videos, are there some clinicians who are bad and incompetent and harmful? Yeah, I've met some of them. I've been a part of court hearings that had to do with that. I have read case reports. Yeah, but it's a small percentage, but it's a percentage, and it sucks that happens. And we need to do more to protect the public from that. Part of my podcast has always been kind of like that, because I find that not a lot of clinicians talk about other clinicians who are unethical, or, I don't know if I should say that, but I worry sometimes that the public doesn't hear about these stories, and especially they don't hear the stories from an actual clinician. Because if you hear a story of an unethical clinician, you might say like, well, like you might be skeptical of it, one, because it's just a news report, or two, you might say like, well, does that mean all of the clinicians are bad? Whereas if you hear it from a clinician, then I can put it in context and can demonstrate that I, as a clinician, at the very least, would never do that or don't think that way, and I spend a lot of time and energy avoiding stuff like that, like harm, risking harm, undue harm to clients. Anyway, so with them, I guess I'm just terrified. If it's gaining membership, I just have to hope that after these two documentaries, the Netflix and the Amazon documentaries, because you got to figure that the members watched at least some of this stuff. It seems like you'd be curious if there were two documentaries about this group that you adhered to. You just think you would watch it. And they showed some footage of Jeff really going after the journalist, and it was just right out of the playbook. Other cult leaders will do this. Certain narcissistic politicians have done this, where a politician will report the facts, and then the narcissistic politician or Jeff or other cult leaders will have a very elaborate response to the journalist. And it could come in a variety of ways. But the first thing they have to do is they have to retain their power over their members. So they have to, and who knows what that looked like. But we could imagine, I think we saw a little bit of the footage or indication that Jeff and Shalia, for sure just told everyone it's lies, that person deceived me. Who knows, but often what these bad actors will do is they will try to find any dirt on the journalist to indicate that they can't be trusted. But then the interesting thing was the journalist showed us the email from Jeff to her after the article came out exposing the facts. And the email was to the journalist, it was saying, I know you didn't want to write this. I know you wanted to tell the truth, but you were forced to lie. I know that. I know that about you. Someone coerced you to lying about us. And I just know that about you. And when I say it out loud, it doesn't sound nefarious, but when I was looking at the letter and the journalist was describing it, it's eerie. It gets under your skin. It's like a horror movie. Because if you just read the verbatim, you think, well, huh? But there's so much rage and threat in there. It's weird. And other people who extracted themselves talked about this as well, how they said, isn't it weird how afraid we were when we were in the cult? And now that we're out, we can see it. But when we were in the cult, we couldn't see the fear. And I think that's another element of effective cult leaders. Charlie Manson, for example, without being directly threatening, sometimes actually being directly threatening, like Jeff would be, but probably most of the time not. They have this ability to induce tremendous fear. And I've experienced this. I've treated people like this. And sitting with them, yeah, it's one of the primary assessment tools is to be aware of your countertransference, the feelings and the impulses and the reactivity that we have as clinicians to particular clients. We can never know. I mean, maybe it was just a bad hot dog that I ate earlier that I'm feeling, or I just got triggered on some trauma of my own that's completely independent of the client. But with some exploration and, a lot of therapy behind, a lot of therapy under my belt for myself, I have, at least I believe I have the ability to decipher what is my stuff and what is an inducement from the client. And another thing is that, when you have 8 clients a day and every client makes you feel different, it's probably not necessarily always related to my past, right? It's like I'm affected by the clients. Anyway, I've been with clients like this, and even though I have power because I'm the clinician, sometimes they're court ordered, that kind of thing. I feel like at any moment they could just squish me, and even though there's no actual threat, they're not saying they're going to hurt me, they haven't threatened me. There's just something nefarious about it, and I think Jeff has that ability. I think he has that ability to intimidate and to scare people. And now that he has power and he has a lot of followers and he has the arrogance and he has the money and the lawyers and, whatever, he, I think, has even more ability. Yeah, are we going to see another documentary in 5 years or 3 years where, because he might, during this time, he might feel kind of backed into a corner. And given his behavior that we've seen, he is not afraid to cross lines, pretty severe lines as a cult member, as a cult leader. And so you wonder at some point, if he's pushed into a corner, will he really get a small group of people and really overpower them and maybe even kill someone or get someone else to kill someone, and then that will send a ripple through his inner circles that will cause people to be even more terrified and more likely to comply. I hope not, honestly, but because I think I said this in the very beginning, with Teal Swan, it kind of looked like in the beginning of her shtick, as she was gaining her notoriety, she would say a lot of wild things. And as she started to get more famous and more scrutiny and more media attention, I think she started to scale back and retain her power and her prestige and money and her followership by not taking risks with saying ridiculous things. She still says ridiculous things like I'm the only person who can save people or I'm better than every clinician. But it was not as severe as the things she was saying before. And so sometimes I hope that happens with some of these people that are exposed. But I don't think Jeff is one of those people. The way that he comes across in the footage, he seems like the sort of person that would get even more severe when he is threatened, more angry, more rageful. And that he would improve on the model, that he would say, oh, okay, I've learned my lessons. Now I need to do these things in order to make sure that I can retain this and get more people. Like, yeah, it's pretty awful. And of course, we know statistically that it's but one of thousands of cults that are in the United States, North America. And that's just our neck of the woods. Around the world, there are cults all over the world. So it's really sad. It's really demoralizing to see the harm, and we're hearing from folks who have extracted themselves and they've been harmed and they're still traumatized, seemingly. But that's just a small percentage of the people who are in the group now, So it's really hard to watch. Well, it's quite a journey. And let me know what you think of the comments. And I wonder what I'll watch next. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself. Let's purge. Let's breathe. I'm not in the cult. You're not in the cult, I hope. We're safe. I'm safe. I hope you're safe. It's late in the evening. I can hear my wife getting ready for bed. There's a certain soundscape that I hear when she's going to bed. My dogs are okay. My family's okay. My friends are okay. I'm okay. You're okay. I hope they're okay. Take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.